everyone, welcome to another Random Talk Sunday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly discuss the history of Christmas. Now, the interesting thing about the history of Christmas is that it's not what we traditionally think Christmas is. So there's going to be a lot of different things that I'm going to kind of cover here, but I'm going to try to go over with you guys sort of the basics and give you sort of a sense of the history and how sort of certain things tie together. Yeah, without further ado, let me address the important aspects of Christmas that we sort of seem to overlook, I think, now. First off, as probably the majority of you know, Christmas is the day supposedly when Jesus was born, or the day when the day that people consider Jesus to be born. However, nobody knows when Jesus was born. There is no records biblically, historically, that indicate when exactly Jesus was born. Nobody has any clue, and again, nobody of us I can say that they were really there, I think, either. So there's really no indication as to when exactly he was born, but the likelihood that it was on Christmas Day doesn't seem to be all that plausible because of what I'm about to explain to you now, which is the Roman pagan holiday of Saturnalia. Now, this holiday took place between the 17th and the 25th of December. And it was sort of like the Purge, but in Rome, because law dictated that no one could be punished for damaging property or injuring people. So basically, the Saturnalia holiday was a holiday of craze and partying, like excessive amounts, of drinking, of eating, of people kind of going completely crazy. So that's kind of what this holiday was about. And this is kind of what ended up resulting in the Christians, again, wanting to gain followers, saying, okay, we'll let you celebrate this Saturnalia holiday, but we're going to recognize this as also Christmas, so we'll put it on the last day, the 25th. That's kind of how this went through history, because a lot of the times history involves compromise, especially when there is big changes that ended up happening, especially considering the fact that Christianity was turning into the main religion. So I think it only makes sense that they would try to compromise with the pagans and say, look, we'll let you celebrate your holiday just as long as you, just as long as you recognize yourself, I guess, as Christian people. But also the holiday included this feature of choosing as someone as Lord. And basically, when you were considered Lord, you were considered an enemy of Rome. And then on the 25th, that was when they would execute the person. So yeah, this was a pretty brutal and crazy holiday. It was not a pleasant holiday. This is nothing like what Christmas is like today. Trust me. I mean, it's just something that they did and was considered their culture. And the Christians that came sort of had to compromise with this and be like, okay, we'll insert Christmas here. And And that's basically how its Christmas sort of evolved and sort of started. It was trying to insert itself and its importance within the culture, and at the same time, kind of again sort of change the culture in a sense as time goes on. Um, Now, you might be wondering, where does the decorating of trees come? Like, that is weird. That is as random as pumpkins being carved on Halloween. Well, the decorating of trees was again a pagan tradition. Pagans loved trees. They would take trees inside their house and decorate them and basically worship them. They worshipped trees. You know, they were very nature oriented. I don't know if we want to consider Roman pagans maybe the first hippies, but I would probably say they come close. Especially with the love of nature and you know the kind of sort of um, very sort of laid back environment, especially considering the fact that they kind of just let people do what they want on the Saturnalia holiday. So yeah, it was very based within that kind of mentality. So that's basically the origin of trees. Um, and I guess the Christians sort of compromised this and made that part of sort of the tradition of Christmas. Okay, this is what your culture does. Okay, we'll incorporate that and make that part of Christmas. Um, Mistletoe was part of the Druids, which were I guess another pagan group of people. Um, and they used mistletoe to poison their human sacrifice. So yes, this is definitely not what we would consider mistletoe. I mean, I apologize if I'm sounding like really like the Nightmare Before Christmas, because like literally all the stuff that I'm saying is just kind of, you know, dark and a little bit sinister in nature, but that's kind of how it was back then, and that's kind of where we got all this stuff from. But again, the Christians being their being their own religion, decided to incorporate the mistletoe by using it as sort of a license for the Saturnalia, or the people who celebrated Saturnalia to um, basically have the sexual license, because usually when we associate with mistletoe, we associate with kissing. So that's kind of what they incorporated and made into their own. So they took mistletoe and they used it for a completely different meaning. So it's very odd, very bizarre, but that's kind of what ended up happening. Um, Also, a huge part of the Saturnalia holiday was for the emperor to um, compel their most despised citizens to give gifts. So I guess that would be, you know, if you weren't cool with the emperor, you know, you had to give him stuff, I guess, in order to kind of, I guess, you know, sort of showcase the emperor's sort of power. However, later this was the gift giving idea was introduced to the general populace, so the general populace could give to each other and whoever. But originally, it was designed for the emperor, and those that he considered to be his enemies were the ones that would give him gifts. So that's really how the origin of sort of gift giving came for Christmas was again this sort of pagan tradition of gift giving. Um, Now you might be wondering where Santa Claus comes in. I'm going to talk about him. He was the Bishop of Myra, which was in Turkey, and he he was just considered one of the important bishops. I think he was supposed to be part of the Council of Sinai, or the place where they basically went, all these bishops came and they figured out what should be put in the Bible and what shouldn't be put in the Bible. I guess he was one of those. But basically once he died, there was this grandma that sort of came out of his death, and basically she gave gifts to children by putting them in their stockings. So she was the one to sort of originate the idea of putting stuff in people's stockings. So again, it was kind of confusing from the research that I did, like how they sort of connect. But I guess it was sort of a like after his death, that was sort of a sort of replacement for him. I guess was sort of this grandma figure. But basically the Catholic Church ended up adopting the Nicholas cult, because ultimately a cult resulted from this bishop. And basically, in order to compromise with the pagans, and again, this includes different sort of pagan groups, they sort of inserted Nicholas as the person who would give gifts on the day of Jesus's supposed birth on the 25th, as opposed to the 6th when he actually died. And again, there's some people in some countries who celebrate on the 6th. My mom's country is one of them, Switzerland. They celebrate on the 6th. They actually put shoes out for St. Nicholas on the 6th. They don't put them out for him on the 25th. So that's kind of though how these traditions kind of got mixed in. There was this, I think Woden was one of the gods' names from the pagan tradition, who would come on a horse, and he was one of the gods that they had, and sort of that's what they did with Saint Nicholas, the Christian tradition. In order to kind of compromise and convert people, they would kind of just take the story and flip it to their advantage and say, hey, it was actually Nicholas, and he comes on the 25th, and that's where he gives his presents, and yeah, that's also when Jesus was born. So again, it's trying to, it's I think a lot of what Christmas came from was trying to insert things that that really weren't associated with Christmas to begin with, but to mix it in with the Christmas tradition in order for Europe to become more for the Christian religion and become more a part of the Christian religion and convert. That's largely, I think, what Christmas was by and large about in its origin. Now, the way we celebrate it today is obviously different, and we associate a lot of different things with Christmas than what we think the history of Christmas is. It's actually not the most, I think, pleasant of histories, especially considering the fact that it originated from a holiday that basically allowed murder and to do whatever you wanted without consequence. It definitely does not resemble in any way, shape, or form our Christmas of today. But still, at the same time, I think it's interesting to look at the history and understand why these traditions were incorporated and why certain things are the way they are. Sort of similar to when I discussed Halloween and also Thanksgiving. I mean, largely, Christmas was based within, I think, mostly pagan tradition and pagan ideas, and not necessarily Christian ideas. But I think that was because Christianity was so in the early stages that it wasn't able to really develop any tradition surrounding it. So it kind of just borrowed and copied from all of these other traditions and kind of tried to incorporate them into the Christian belief. So really, in essence, Christmas is not all about the Christianity, I think, especially when you look at the history. It's not, it's largely not based within the original story um, that people talk about within the Bible. It's largely based within all of these different ideas and traditions, and sort of mixing them together and creating kind of sort of a one identity. And that's really what um, the bishops were intending to do really during the time, because they wanted to unify everybody under the same religion, because then they would have more influence and definitely more power. So it makes sense from a historical perspective why there is so much paganism within Christmas, why there are so many traditions that really don't follow really Christianity necessarily, and why there was so much incorporation of maybe certain Christian things like Saint Nicholas into pagan ideas. It was largely to, I think, uh, Christianize the masses, because a lot of people had still their own gods and goddesses. So it really was about that. It was largely based within that. Um, but I think that's really ultimately all I can say when it comes down to this topic. I mean, it's not the most I think lighthearted of histories, but I think it's still very interesting to explore, and it's really I think worthy to understand the history. Um, and again, I think it's kind of good that we took sort of uh, a positive direction with Christmas, and incorporated all these things that maybe weren't necessarily part of its origin, but at the same time incorporate things that ultimately resulted in more positive ideas and more um, sort of interesting concepts. And I think that's really the sort of thing to get behind it, is even though there's not a whole lot of cheer within the origin, I think what we took from it and what we incorporated um, ended up resulting, I think, in a very positive holiday, at least now, compared to what it was back in the day. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. And I was so happy that I was able to have this video up by Sunday, as opposed to uploading it on Monday. So that should be great. But until Monday, everybody. Bye-bye.